On today's Hot Sheet, I'm discussing housing inventory, a preview of this week's Fed meeting, and new home sales. Today is Monday, July 28, 2025. I'm Byron Lazine, and the Hot Sheet starts now. Live from Connecticut. Welcome into a really active week on the Hot Sheet. I know I keep saying we're in the dog days of summer. This week won't feel like it as we wrap up July and head into August on Friday. There's a ton of economic, housing, rate, Fed. It's Fed week. Just data points and little mini, events on the calendar here this week. I mean, just take a look at this. While I pull it up, let me know in the live chat which market you're tuning into here to kick off this week. I mean, these are all the things that are happening this week. We got a housing vacancy and home ownership report coming out later today. S&P CoreLogic price indices come out tomorrow when we're doing BAMX role play, and then we'll have it obviously for the Hot Sheet at 9:30. The team will be working on that while I'm doing the role play. FHFA house price index is coming out tomorrow. Job openings, labor turnover, that'll be wrapping up after the Hot Sheet. We'll cover that on Wednesday. Mortgage applications, ADP, employment report, all on Wednesday. Remember, Tuesday, the FOMC gets together. It's not even on this list when they start the meeting, the press conferences. Pending home sales comes out on Wednesday. We had existing home sales last week. FOMC meeting and press conference. That happens Wednesday at 2. We'll break it all down. We'll go through everything that Jerome Powell says in the presser, all the Q&A. We'll pull everything out that's housing related. We got PCE, the Fed's favorite inflation metric, coming out Thursday, okay, after the meeting. We got weekly unemployment. We got an employment report on Friday. Okay, there's a ton for this week. So a lot going on in the last week of July. Expect you've seen weeks here in the summer where it's like, man, that there's more going on than I thought there would. And I think a lot of that has to do with the kind of high-paced action now that, this isn't obviously always a political conversation, or rarely is, but there is a high pace to the new administration. And that pace is merging into the economy, and it's merging into decisions. And, there's a lot going on, and you're seeing kind of that fast pace now here in the summer months kind of kick in with everything that's going on in the economy, and the impacts that it has on housing is everything that we're going to cover. All right, as we kick off every single week, we got a little bit more on the Fed to set up that Fed meeting here later this week, and Jerome Powell. News that's going on as his press conference. I feel like this Wednesday afternoon is going to be maybe the most highly anticipated one since he cut rates last, or since the FOMC cut rates, I should say. So we'll get into some more of that. First, let's get into inventory. We track it every week, kick off every single week with inventory. The real estate market, the real estate recession that has gone on for 3 years only gets normalized when we get back to a normal place of inventory, which we're basically at, okay? Like, as it relates to inventory, you got some high inventory markets are like, oh, the market is not as good. No, it's normal. It's not bad, okay? It's just more normal. And where did we hit this last week? Weekly inventory rose to 860,000. That's up from 856. Now, you don't see the pace of inventory increases that we saw last year still during the summer. Now, historically, you would see kind of like what you saw in 2019, a flattening of inventory increases. You might see more inventory increase if the rates were higher. But typically, like 2019, normal year, you kind of hit your peak on inventory increases, and then come the fall, you get the inevitable, and we'll have it this year, no matter what's going on in your market, we'll have it this year, the inevitable seasonal inventory decline. That's coming. Last year, it didn't kind of peak out until, second half of October before it started declining. But if you think about 2019, last full normal year, you peaked out. You kind of were peaked out all summer long. Even now, you kind of just were flat. And then end of September, you started that seasonal decline. All right, this past week, we clock in at 27 more year-over-year inventory than we had last year at the same time. That's a slight, decline from the percentages that we've been at throughout the year. These percentages leading up to this point have been up over 30% on a year-over-year basis. So the 27% more than last year is significant, but it's shrinking right now as we're not seeing the inventory increases that maybe we would expect if we thought we'd be on the same trend line as 24. 860,000, still well above 2019 lows. Still an outside chance. I'm holding hope that we can get and break 900,000 this year. Even without breaking 900,000, there's a real chance that we could start 2020 at about, depending on how steep our decline is. Like last year, it wasn't as steep as what you would see in 2019 on the seasonal decline, but we could start 2026 around where we started 2020. And remember, January and February 2020 real estate markets were not impacted by COVID. It wasn't until middle of March. So January and February, while they were maybe hotter leaning towards sellers for sure, it was much closer to a normal market, much like 2019. 2019 was a much more normal market. I think getting to 817,000 to start January, in 26 might be a little bit of a stretch. Probably be below that. Depends on how high we increase here throughout the rest of the year. But if we were just started where 2020 was, like, a little bit under 800, wow, that's going to mean really, good things for inventory coming into 2026. Couple that with potentially Realtor.com's mid-year being right, and we go into the year closer to 6.25 than we are at 6.75 now. And you could start to see some real fluidity in the market. New single family listings. Why do I love Altos Research? Altos Research, which Housing Wire owns. I know the founder just got a chief economist position at Compass, but the tool he built, Housing Wire owns, and we look at this Altos Research every single week. It's great data because it's week to week. It's not month over month like a lot of the other data that we can get our hands on. And it's clean. NARs, for example, their total inventory includes pendings. That total inventory that we just saw was a true picture of the market. As this one is, national single family new listings, 71,500 for the week. Anything over 80,000 was kind of the target. We only hit it really once this year, never really sustained, hit it twice, I should say, never really sustained over 80,000 on single family listings. This week coming in at 71,000, probably not going to break the 80,000 metric. Remember during the great financial collapse, the crisis, the mortgage crisis, during the recovery, we were seeing single family listings per week at 250,000 to 400,000. Okay, we're at 71,000 right now. We're nowhere near an oversupplied market. I know things take longer to sell in the Sun Belt states. It's called get used to what normal used to look like. Okay, you were sold a line that we're 7 million homes short to meet supply, but when the only place national builders build is in Sun Belt, not everybody's moving there. Trust me, I like the Sun Belt, prefer it as I sit here in the Northeast, but not everybody does. So you don't have the supply in all the geographical locations, and certainly not at the affordable price points to meet the 5-7 million of demand. that they claim we have this shortage in. Use the word affordability. Geographically located is an important component to that. 71,000 on new listings is, we're still kind of scraping. Remember, the last 2 years were the lowest new listings, single family new listings ever recorded. And we're scraping those numbers. We're kind of doing a little bit better than the bottom of the pint of ice cream. We're just above the bottom. And we were at the bottom the last couple of years. So why is this? Why do new listings, are they still essentially lagging? This would increase inventory, back to 2019 levels like that if we got new listings in line. Well, because most sellers' listings are also a buyer. You've got, do I want to trade out of my rate? You've got, is the right, now we're finally seeing some inventory. Is the right opportunity out there for the market? You'll start to see some of this obviously loosen up, but sellers are most often buyers, and the majority of them are. And so unless you've got the right opportunity at the right price point on the other side, it may not necessarily make sense to sell. And that's the doom loop for the last 3 years that we've been dealing with. This is an indication that prices aren't going to jump up this year. The percent of properties with recent price reductions last week was 41.5%, 41.6. This is the highest level of the last 3 years, the last 4 years, really, outside of the end of 22 when rates kind of accelerated. We'll probably beat that number this year. 41.6. The same week last year was 39%. You typically need a third of homes are going to reduce price before they sell. We're above that. That's an indicator that we're not going to see a huge price increase this year. A point, 2 points. It's in line with that Realtor.com mid-year report that we went over last week. On a national number, some areas, obviously Northeast, might go a little bit more just due to less inventory. All right. You would think that it'd be less when you see this number. You would think, hey, less people would, be reducing their home and there'd be more sales, even though we saw existing home sales come in really low last week. But you'd look at mortgage applications and say that just seems odd. We've had 25 straight weeks of positive year-over-year data, 12 consecutive weeks of double-digit growth year-over-year. So these numbers are huge year-over-year on mortgage purchase applications. But remember, a lot of people applying for a mortgage, this data doesn't actually show up in any sales for 60, 90 plus days. Okay. And so that's one factor when you see this. Now, we have had 25 straight weeks, but we were certainly coming off a low level like we've never, the lowest level we've seen last year since 1995. We're still recovering from that. It's been a real estate recession for the last 3 years. So this growth is, certainly exceptional. But I mean, all you got to do, and we post this, I always post all the slides that we use on the hot sheet each and every single week. And if we just go to last week, posted every week where the mortgage applications are coming in. It's in the slides for BAMX members inside of school. You can grab it anytime. We're still down at the 2012 bottoming out, double bottoming of the real estate market, and that leaked into 13, 14 on purchase applications. And you can go back to 95 as the other low point. We're still recovering from this level of mortgage purchase applications. We have a long way to go. Most of the sellers are buyers. So, they may be applying for a mortgage. Hey, let's see what we can get before we decide to put the house on the market. Maybe we still need to do stuff before we put in the house on the market. What did we see in June? Highest level of cancellations. Okay, I'm not going to buy my next house if my buyer just canceled on my house. Highest level of cancellations ever recorded in June per Redfin. That's right here in your hot sheet slides. All the slides every single day get uploaded into the hot sheet. Go to school.com/BAMX. If you're not a member of the #1 community to close more deals, it's BAMX on school. But 14.9% June 2025, highest level ever recorded for cancellations. So why are applications up, but we're not seeing that in total sales? Because there's a lot of different variables here. There's a lot of things that are happening that are kind of slowing that down. Okay. So pending home sales over the last week showed signs though of, hey, maybe it is starting to catch it. 70,000 versus 64,000. That's a good week over, same week last year jump. Obviously rates have ticked down this last week a little bit relative to, kind of where this was in the beginning of July, where the rate was. But 70,000 weekly pending sales for single family versus 65,000 same time last year. Monitor that growth. Okay, total pending home sales, we're just a tick above where we were last year. Again, it's not showing up in the existing home sales. So those cancellations on the rise is one of the reasons. Longer close times, but 384,000 versus 382,000. We'll get pending home sales from NAR data, as we said, later this week. So we'll be taking a look at that. Huge week coming up. But this is where we kind of sit right now on a national macro level on the housing market. Know the macro. When you have a client that's talking about a headline that they saw in the macro, we talked about on Knowledge Brokers on Friday, one of the most misleading Wall Street Journal headlines. Well, guess what? Your clients read Wall Street Journal, and being able to, account for some of the things that they're hearing or some of the way headlines are written on what's actually happening on the macro to relate it back to your micro is super important and relevant. All right, let's get into this FOMC meeting this week. Jerome Powell, the federal committee, which is going to make the decision on will there be a July cut. They start the meeting tomorrow. They meet Wednesday. It's a 2-day meeting. Wednesday, 2 p.m., Jerome Powell does the presser. He has his prepared statements. He takes Q&A from the audience. We here at BAM break down every piece of the transcript, pull everything out in relation to housing or rates, and then we'll break it all down, obviously, on Thursday's hot sheet. But what are the expectations here leading into the meeting? What is the Fed likely to do? Bank of America says we do not expect any policy changes at the July Fed meeting happening here over the next 48 hours. Most FOMC participants likely view the meeting as a placeholder. Okay. The balance of risks remains the same as in June, to the upside on inflation and to the downside on the labor market. I don't know. Since June, the labor reports have been very strong, but they still point towards potential downside on the labor market. Obviously, downside on the labor market would also get the Fed to act quicker. Not that we want to see that. The Fed will have a lot more information on how these risks have evolved by the September meeting. Oh, look at this. Austin. August. August is when the Fed gets their Jackson Hole Symposium, their famous annual retreat to Jackson Hole. What a great time to go to Jackson. There's probably no better time to go to Jackson Hole, and yet the Fed committee picks August, Jackson Hole. They do this annually. This symposium is August's Jackson Hole Symposium further reduces the urgency to guide markets next week. Oh, we'll figure it out over some Chardonnay in Jackson. Okay. We'll figure it out over some $600 bottles of wine a la NAR over there in Jackson in August. Like let's just bump it to when we see each other. Private jets flying into Jackson Hole. The Fed will have an additional month's worth of data by then. With the benefit of hindsight, it is clear that Powell used his Jackson Hole speech last year. Okay, so last year we got big news out of Jackson Hole to signal the 50 basis point cut that came in September. Remember, he cut leading right into the election. Jerome Powell, who doesn't play politics, was cutting right into the election, promising cuts and making cuts, and those have been the only cuts he's made. This year, Powell will most likely be speaking on the morning of August 22nd. Although the focus will be on the framework review, we see strong chance that Powell will also provide a signal on the near-term policy trajectory. Okay. So probably nothing to see here. The markets reflect that view that there's not going to be any decision, anything made. They'll bump this to Jackson Hole, as Bank of America says. CME Group says 97% chance, no change in the rate. Poly market, this is where people actually put money on if there'll be a change in the rate or not. This is the betting odds. Poly market's got 96% chance, so in line with CME Group. September, there is a 54% chance, which has been flip-flopping here a little bit. Right now, coming in at 54% chance that there will be a 25 basis point cut in September. Remember, there was a 50 basis point cut that we just mentioned in September of last year, and it was announced, essentially announced at the Jackson Hole meeting. We know there's at least, there's more than one, but there's one very loud voice that wants to see these rates cut. That's the president of the United States, President Trump. He sparred with Powell not only in these weeks leading up to this week, but specifically last week, right at Jerome Powell's home turf, the new Federal Reserve headquarters. Now, only 3 prior presidents have ever visited the Fed. President Trump now being one of those, now the 4th, I guess, current president, sitting president, to visit the Fed and kind of look over all of the different, renovations that are happening. They talked, they did a little, I guess, interview with the press. Trump spoke on tariffs. It's important, I guess, maybe for Trump to get his message to Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell has been afraid of tariffs. Also asked about their relationship. So let's go into some of this. Let's start with Trump speaking on his tariff policy so far. And then before we continue on with Jerome Powell, I got an update on the tariff impact here on the economy. But let's start with Trump and his speaking about his tariff policy. This is at the Fed during the walkthrough of the renovations, the $2.7 billion renovations happening over at the Fed headquarters.
We found $26 billion last month. And they said, where did that come from? I said, why don't you try the tariff? Said it was true. We're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, and our country is doing great. And we have no inflation, and the numbers, the job, everything is good. The one thing we have to do is get housing prices down and the interest rates down so people can buy the house, because they're all making money, but they can't get the interest rate down. We have to.
Amen.
All right.
There you go.
Been my friend for a long
time. A number of construction sites.
Go ahead and pause that. I think most watching this show are aligned with housing and would at least, take all the politics and stuff that you hate about Trump or whatever, out of the equation. I think that last statement, we got to get housing prices, which is really, I don't think housing prices are going to go too far. It's really about getting those rates down so that the affordability goes up, so that housing sales go up. There's a huge impact on the economy, obviously, when sales go up. But all right, so he's talking about tariffs here, and it's interesting. Nick, sorry, Haley, can I go to there we go. Nick Timmeros, Wall Street Journal, put a piece out. Goldman Sachs analysis concluded that foreign firms, especially in China, appear to be absorbing around 20% of the tariffs. So Trump's tariffs are being picked up by corporate America. Neither consumers nor foreign countries are assuming much of the tariff burden. Of course, that is at least not yet. Remember, I've been, pretty adamant that you got to think of tariffs as what they are, a negotiating position to try to get more deals done. You can say a lot of things about President Trump. There's one thing that you look silly saying is that he's not a master negotiator. He certainly is that, and there's evidence of that just over the weekend. He strikes another trade deal, this time with EU. So stacking up multiple trade deals now, using tariffs as the leverage. And you can look at the data, there's dollars coming in now to the US, and Wall Street Journal, which Wall Street Journal has a lot of headlines I know that the president doesn't like, now acknowledging, hey, so far 90 plus days in, the tariffs have not impacted inflation. Now, Jerome Powell takes the opposing position that he wants to continue to wait and see. How long is he going to wait is the question. It's certainly going to be asked on Thursday. Simpsons, of course, predict everything. I'm just going to go through Nick T's X timeline here. And this is where we adjust the interest rate. You can see Trump, Jerome Powell on the left in the new Fed building. And then, of course, the Simpsons on the right. And Simpsons always predict everything. So that's just a funny clip. I'll show you one more here from his before we move on to some more of this. This was retweeted on the BAM account. We'll watch this in a second. Could literally pass the scene straight from The Office. Powell and Trump disagreeing. Let's go to more Powell Trump. Let's go to 958. Let's ask about their relationship. A reporter asks Trump and Powell about their relationship.
I feel good about it. I mean, look, I have one dispute, and the dispute is there could be some things with money and, where it comes from, how it's come from, how it's printed, where it's printed, all of the standard things with the Fed. But I just want to see one thing happen. Very simple. Interest rates have to come down. If the interest rates don't come down, we're knocking it out of the park with high interest rates. If interest rates come down, then that final little element kicks in. That's housing. And the sad part is that people, wonderful young people, young couples starting off, they can't get a mortgage because the rates are too high. Tim knows that better than anybody, I think.
But Mr. President, if the rates are hurting families in the country, why let that keep going for another 8 months? Why not just fire them?
Because to do that is a big move, and I just don't think it's necessary. And I believe that he's going to do the right thing.
Okay, so President Trump now is you're hearing him week over week, certainly the last few weeks here in the summer, pinpoint housing as top of the priority. Okay, he's gotten some big deals done in crypto, the Genius Bill, which is, I think, in new legislative, I think it's like over 10 years to get a new law passed. You need 60 votes. There was, obviously bipartisan support there on the Genius Bill, which is, we talked about a little bit here, the stablecoin bill that had bipartisan support. It's very rare in today's climate to get, bipartisan 60 plus votes in the Senate to advance a law, to create a new law. And so he's checked off. Look at the trade deals, leveraging tariffs to get a lot of these trade deals. The EU over the weekend, investment into US. That stablecoin deal, the Genius Act, actually brings companies that are hanging out in those islands within the next 3 years back here to the US. He has an all-time high stock market. Okay, the stock market has hit now all-time high after all-time high after all-time high. So very quickly, this is a short period of time, 4 or 5 months, 6 months almost in, you have seen the things that this administration campaigned on, and the economy, inflation is not an issue right now. You're seeing all these check. And he said it, the last piece is ultimately housing. And that's going to be an interest rate dependent environment. There's two wins that you could have when you start talking about long-term rates. America's got a lot of debt, huge deficit, needs to refinance that as well. So low rates would kind of solve a little bit of those last two problems. And you're just going to hear the president hammer now on housing directly in our purview here over and over and over again. Let's go to he mentioned, I don't think that's necessary about firing Powell. And so let's go to 1226 here, where they ask if there's any pressure on Powell to resign. He's been pretty clear here as of late that he's not going to fire Powell, doesn't think he needs to do that. He actually thinks that Powell is going to start cutting rates. I don't know where he's getting that information or inclination. Certainly not going to happen over the next 48 hours, it appears. But is there pressure on Powell to resign? Let's hear the response.
No, there's no pressure. No, we want to have, his term comes up soon. I think he's going to do the right thing. Everybody knows what the right thing is. Even people that believed in, the higher rates, they're all on board. They all want to see the interest rates come down. It's very important.
Okay. So I think it's pretty clear from Supreme Court. I don't really think Trump can fire Jerome Powell. There needs to be a separation between the federal government and the Federal Reserve, or at least a perception of separation. Hasn't always, even in the last 4 years, worked that way. I think there have been times when Powell has done a really good job, and there's been times when Powell has played politics as well. I think leading into the election, it's the only time they've cut rates. What was certainly one of those moments. I think convincing in the beginning of the Biden administration, Congress to print an additional $2.3 trillion unnecessary dollars just because they could. Hey, just because you should have that, just because there's more Fortaleza tequila left doesn't mean you should have that last drink at the end of the night. If you can get any Fortaleza, by the way, and you don't want it, send it to me. Very difficult to get. I will take it from you. But just because you can have that last drink doesn't mean you should. And just because you could print the $2.3 trillion doesn't mean that you should. All right, new home sales. Let's take a look quickly on this. We'll see, obviously. I'm really looking forward to Powell's commentary. We didn't show the comical commentary. I'm sure you've already seen it in your news feed. Trump saying the 3.1. Powell, I showed you the meme like, hey, this is straight out of The Office. Powell saying, no, that's not news to me. Trump had included a Fed building from 5 years ago, but that is $3.1 billion of Fed buildings in total. That's a lot of money. Fed says it's their money, not your money, but that's a whole nother thing. All right, new residential sales, new construction getting beat up, builders getting beat up in this high interest rate environment. Houses sold, new houses sold, seasonally adjusted annual rate comes in at 627,000. New houses for sale, 511,000. Median sale price for new build is at 401,800, certainly off the peak highs. And houses sold moving down a little bit. 627,000 is 0.6 above May, but it's 6.6% below last June rate of 671,000. So year over year, moving down, moving sideways, month over month. For sale inventory, the 511,000 is 8.5% above June's level and 1.6% above May's estimate. Look at this, 10 months of supply at the current sales rate for builders. This is what you would consider a highly leveraged buyer's market, very extreme buyer's market. It's 1% above May, and it's 16.7% above June's 24, which was at 8.4. Builders feeling the squeeze, less traffic, less buyers, and inventory now racking up for national home builders across the country. The median sale price of new homes in June was 401,000. That's 5% below May of 422. That's 3% below June 2024 of 414,000. And The average sale price in June was $501,000. That's 2% below May, and that's 1.1% though above June 2024. So there's your new construction single family home report there for the month, as just released by the U.S. Census Bureau. We're starting the day off after that EU trade deal announced and Fed week at 4.412. This is towards the high point of the last 30 days and certainly towards the high point of the last 5 days on the 10 years. So not fantastic. Nothing crazy though. 6.81 on the 30-year fixed is where we ended last week. Okay. There you go. There's your hot sheet here to kick off the week. It's a big week, as I mentioned, to get all the slides from this week, be able to use them in real time on your communications, text message, general conversations with your client, your database. Just go into school.com/BAMX and become a BAMX member today. You go into the classroom here for a hot sheet, and you've got all of today's information, including the report from Zudilio, our friends at Zudilio, on the top 10 housing markets for cash offers. Denver, Vegas, Richmond, Houston, Phoenix make up the top 5. San Diego, Atlanta, LA, Tampa, and Dallas. So for the last week, those are your top 10 housing markets for cash. Every BAMX member gets Zudilio's platform included in the membership. So not just the hot sheet slides, the BAMX members also get Zudilio's platform included in, as well as all of our new hyper local content each and every single week. It's the best value in real estate by far. Number one platform, number one community to help you close more deals is BAMX, school.com/BAMX. With Zudilio now and now Mosaic's platforms being included for every member, we are paying you to join. Try it for the next 7 days. School.com/BAMX. And there you go. There's your hot sheet. I will see you guys tomorrow. Until then, of course, toodaloo.